So, this is going to be part one of my occult origin story, which is something I was starting to write about earlier in the year. Got through part one, which took me up to maybe about age 9, and lost the notes and outline that I made somewhere. It's in a pile of something downstairs, maybe. Don't know. But I've often joked, and I'll include the Polaroid, given my age, that I've been a witch since Halloween of 1980. So my grandmother made me. My grandmother was a seamstress in a factory that made like bathing suits, but she made a lot of my clothing and stuff, and also Halloween costumes growing up. So minus those awful plastic suffocating masks, um, she made my entire Halloween costume, which is this long black gown, a cape, the hat, everything. It got a lot of wear, let me tell you, not just for Halloween. I was a weird kid. So the cape didn't make it through the 80s, nor did the hat, but I think I still have the dress. I don't know why. I mean, I've kept it all these years. It's probably packed away somewhere, but I still have it. So one of my favorite movies as a child, yes, I watched, the typical Disney movies and things like that, but I loved Wizard of Oz because I loved sort of the duality of the good witch, bad witch vibe. And that may be why I decided why I was a witch for Halloween that year. I grew up watching a lot of, my mom liked the old school, like, horror and sci-fi movies from like the 1950s and 60s. So I was watching like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, War of the Worlds, Dracula, all that stuff when I was like 4 or 5. So, thanks, Mom. She doesn't remember. I was talking to her about it recently. She doesn't remember, and I'm like, yeah, but we watched all those crazy movies when I was a little kid. But I've always loved horror and science fiction, so that's probably why. But I even as a kid, I was the weird kid, and I wasn't into the Pink Princess, all that stuff. Sure, I had Barbie dolls, but yeah, I was notorious for taking their gorgeous little prom dresses, chopping them up and making like punk rock Barbie doll outfits for them, and coloring their hair with magic markers and things like that. So I was a creative child. I probably drove my parents crazy because they'd be like, "Oh, look at this pretty princess." Oh, she's done it again. But I digress. I wanted them to look like rock stars, not like fancy pants debutantes, because that's not what I wanted to be. I was very much a child of sort of the MTV generation. I was watching MTV at the age of 6 when it came on, which is my dad's fault. So the reason I'm so weird, Dad, is because he said, "Hey, you should check this out," in 1981, August. But, I wanted to write, talk, and originally write, but I think it'd probably be much easier for me to just make this part of a YouTube series and versus blog posts, because sometimes getting me to sit down and like write things can be challenging. Sometimes I will sit and write like a billion things, and then I won't write anything for like months. So my cultural heritage is mostly Eastern European, Ukrainian, with some roots in Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, and Romania. There's also some Germanic roots and a little bit of Irish and English and general Northern Europe, according to my ancestry, or 23andMe ancestry report. As an Eastern European family, I was born Byzantine Catholic, which is different than Roman Catholicism. So after the fall of Rome, this might be backwards, but so Roman Catholicism went over through Western Europe, and the Byzantine or Greek Catholic, it's not Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox, it's Byzantine Catholic, that went through like Eastern Europe and Russia and stuff like that. But they're similar, but the practices are different. I actually like the Byzantine Catholic churches much more than the Roman Catholic ones. But I was mostly raised, I feel culturally more Ukrainian than I do the other aspects of my cultural heritage. But the one thing about Eastern European families is they tend to be much more matriarchal. Now, the women may not have been the bread earners, but they wore the pants for the whole universe. My Grammy, doubly so. Both of my grandmothers were very strong, intelligent women, and, I think I inherited a lot of their strength, wit, and my dominant personality type from them. And my flair for fashion from my paternal grandmother, my Grammy, and wearing all black. So she was fancy, very fancy, very extra. Very, very extra. She was always very put together, very fashionable, accessorized. I actually, after she passed, I inherited a lot of her accessories, and I have more scarves than I could wear in a single year at this point. But, thinking to the different things that I'm interested in now, like one of my earliest memories, and I've been driving my mom crazy with this one, is that I was probably about 4 years old, and my father gave me my first crystals. And I had this really beautiful piece of uncut rose quartz. I haven't held this thing in my hand in probably 20 years, and I've had my mom searching high and low in the attic and basement for it. She still hasn't found it yet. Found everything else, including, a geode from her father from the Gobi Desert, which is actually really awesome. It was in 2 pieces. I got half, my brother took the better half. Jerk. I kid. But, I still remember what that piece of crystal felt like in my hand as a child. Like the energy it had. I can still picture like every imperfection and ridge and all the color and just how it felt. And he also gave me, it was a quartz, it was a carved donkey. I don't know what happened to either of them over the years. I feel like the donkey may have broken at some point, but anyways, my mom's, been going through the attic, cleaning out things, and, I got some other cool stuff out of it. Lots of seashells, some petrified wood, the geode, other crystals and rocks, and things like that. So, and in my videos, a lot of times I talk about dreams and, having vivid dreams, a lot of my work within the astral realm and doing astral travel. And I even remember dreams I had, like, I was 3 or 4 years old, things that were, I remember one time dreaming that I was a bat and I had the sheets over me and I was like flapping up and down in bed. I remember, and there were things that were happening in the world that I remember, influencing my dreams. And so like when 3 Mile Island happened in 1979, I was about 4 years old at the time, but I remember like nuclear power plants, not even really knowing what they were, but that kind of invading my dream space. And according to my mom, I used to make nuclear power plants with my blocks. So even things like, those like inexplicable dreams, there's like dinosaurs coming down my grandmother's street and I was hiding in the sofa cushions and stuff like that. Because I used to love that show. I don't know if anyone remembers it. Land of the Lost. Was that like late 70s, early 80s maybe? It was sort of on in that like Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, Electric Company, Land of the Lost, that kind of television block. You can tell my age by that alone. The interesting thing, and I've always been fascinated in dream worlds, as is my mother, because I think sometimes our dreams are very connected in ways. Like, she didn't tell me, this was maybe 10, 15 years ago she told me about this, but she was telling me when I was a little kid, I used to have dreams about animals biting my hands and fingers. And she was like, I never told you this, but I used to have the same dreams when I was a little kid. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, we have, there's something, I think my mom's way more clairvoyant than she gets. She's always like, why does this keep happening? I'm like, mother. She'd be like, I was thinking about this person, like, I used to work with 40 years ago, and I woke up and their obituary was in the paper. I'm like, yeah. But anyways, hi, Mom, if you're watching. So, I've always been really interested in dreams, and, I was a very creative and imaginative child, and I love drawing and building things, and it's funny. My early artistic renderings, I don't know why. I think it was because we lived until I was 5. We lived in an apartment complex in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and it was next to a bus depot, and there was a big chimney, and I think at some point in time the chimney got struck by lightning. Apparently, this pervaded my subconscious because I always was obsessed with drawing houses whose chimneys were lying on the ground because they got struck by lightning. I drew a million of those. My mom probably still has some in the attic somewhere. And my life has also been... There's been a lot of weird things that have happened in my life, paranormal, and just like effed up stuff like my kindergarten teacher dropped dead of a heart attack in front of us in class at the age of 37. So, I have very vivid memories of that. Like, we didn't understand what death was, as 5-year-olds, and this was within like the first month of being in kindergarten. We just thought she fell asleep, so we were trying to wake her up, and eventually I realized something was wrong, and sort of led the charge to go find a grown-up teacher in another room with a few other students. But I didn't have the words or understanding to kind of communicate to my parents what had happened. And this was 1980, so, wasn't, couldn't send out like a text blast, or, it took a while for the school to notify all the parents. I was in like afternoon kindergarten, so sometime later that evening, I remember my mom telling me something. I kept saying something about my teacher's leg, and they told them what happened and stuff like that. So, weird shit like that happens to me. When I tell people that, they're like, wish I was making this stuff up. I'm not. And so in 1981, we relocated from Allentown, Pennsylvania to Rome, Georgia, which is about an hour outside of Atlanta. Because my father got a teaching job there. And, I can't say it was the greatest experience of my life, because being a transplanted northerner living in rural-ish Georgia, I was the dumb Yankee. It was eye-opening. Apparently it's not called the Civil War down there, or at least wasn't in the early 80s. It was the War of Northern Aggression. It's a sore spot, apparently. And, there was a lot of different issues, but the South is just very different. I don't know how to explain it. Unless you've lived there, it's just different. I don't know. Like, I mean, the area, the place where we ended up buying a house, I think it was built on a swamp. Our yard would get very soupy when it would rain. But, I used to find the old, arrowheads and things like that around, and exploring, different areas and playing outside. And I loved, even before this, I think when we lived in the apartments in Allentown, I love when a lot of little kids do this, making witch's brew, where it would always be like after a storm, and you'd collect all the leaves and flowers and twigs and stuff and put in a big pot with water, and make this gross, horrendous smelling concoction. And we called it witch's brew, which is funny because when I make Florida water now, it kind of takes me back to that memory as a child, as I'm putting all these flower petals and, parts of plants in the pot and stuff like that. So it kind of reminds me of that in a way. So one of the things when you live in the South you get used to are tornado drills in school. And I, part of me loves storms and thunderstorms and things like that. And then there's part of me that's still like, holy shit, we're all gonna fucking die. Because, you know, when you have to do tornado drills in school, and sometimes they're legit because there might be a tornado in the area, you know, lining up in the hallway, you know, with your hands over your head against the wall and stuff like that, you know, it kind of has an impact on you. So I always feel a very weird energy with thunderstorms, especially severe storms. Like, I just get really anxious. But so does my mom as well. I think she actually did see a funnel cloud one time, but when we first moved to Georgia, we rented a house which had this really neat, like, wooded backyard and stuff. I went to public school for the first 2 years, and then we ended up converting to Roman Catholicism because not a lot of Eastern Europeaners in Northwest Georgia. And also, I think the only Jewish family of Northwest Georgia also went to the Catholic Church because close enough, I guess. But so that's kind of where we switched to Roman Catholicism. But so the second house we lived in, and this is sort of where I started becoming more aware of kind of paranormal-y things, is that the house was previously owned. The family, their eldest, I think it was their eldest daughter, died in a car accident. It was like a foggy night or something, and they were stopped at the train tracks because a train was coming, but they couldn't see that they were too close to the train tracks when they stopped. So the train hit the car, and they all died. But I think my bedroom was her bedroom previously, and I always kind of sensed a spirit or ghost or something like that. I don't know if I ever told my parents about it, but, you know, it was something I just was sensitive to it, even as a child. So, and around this time, I guess maybe I was about 7, I had an experience. I would say I almost drowned, but really I just fell in the deep end of the pool and someone had to pull me out. But, you know, I was, you know, kind of went under a couple times and panicked. But, you know, I started having these kind of waking visions and dreams of past lives. And one of my earliest, like, spiritual beliefs as a child was reincarnation. Now, I don't think anyone would have explained to a 6-year-old or 7-year-old reincarnation. I wouldn't have learned it at Sunday school. I don't know where. It was just something that made sense to me in a way. And so I used to always have, there's a particular, like, vision of this young girl who died. And her name was Camille Christiana Peacock. Don't know if this was ever a actual person. But, you know, I would just have flashes of her life and things like that. I think she may have drowned, which could have somehow triggered my almost drowning experience. But I remember them sticking with me till, like, probably I was in junior high. You know, I always felt like as a child, I was born an adult. I didn't really want to be a child. I didn't like doing kid things. You know, it just wasn't, it just didn't feel right. I didn't enjoy my childhood. I didn't enjoy being a child. I felt trapped. I felt trapped in, like, I can't be doing the things I need to be doing and want to be doing, and all these rules and school stuff sucks. So, you know, that was hard for me as a kid, actually, because I was weird. I didn't fit in. I was, you know, the MTV generation kid. I've been a metalhead, you know, since I think probably one of the first videos I saw on MTV was Motley Crue's Live Wire in 1981. So I've loved Motley Crue for 38 39. Probably going on 39. Because MTV came on in August of 1981, so it would have been after that. Maybe even early 1982, but somewhere in that time frame. But I'm going to do a separate video because there are a lot of occult influences for me that come from having been an early childhood metalhead. Shocking. I know. I've been shouting at the devil since 1982. What are you going to do about it? But that's kind of where things started for me. And, you know, I guess probably it was like the summer of 84. We decided to move back north to Pennsylvania, to the Lehigh Valley area. And then I had to deal with the reverse weirdo of, you know, so I was the northerner who moved south and was the dumb Yankee. And then I was the weird girl from the north with a very deep southern accent, and, you know, the kid with their fingernails painted green and blue in the 4th grade at a Catholic school in a small town. Yeah. It was weird. Very weird. But not a lot has changed on that realm. I'm still freaking weird, and I'm going to be 45 soon. So I think if someone called me normal or boring, I would punch them in the face. Because that would be an insult to me. Be weird. Always be weird. I think I even have a t-shirt that says always be weird on it. So that's part one. I'm going to go into sort of different stages of things because they developed over the years, obviously as I got older. And different things occurred in my life, but that's part one of my origin story. Yeah, a lot of us, you know, come to the occult world and magic and witchcraft, you know. So I don't know if some people are just born into it, or if there's just a natural proclivity towards being attracted to those types of things. But I didn't want My Little Pony. I wanted Motley Crue and Dracula. That's the 9-year-old I was. Actually, even probably younger. Funny side story, though. As I learned later in life as a business owner, I make soaps and shampoo bars. And I discovered, because I made for a cheeky Valentine's Day line, I had a really lovely shampoo bar, which I called Sparklegasm. And every time at events, I kept noticing certain types of people like this particular soap shampoo bar more than others. Because no one told me that little girls like pink heart-shaped things that have glitter and smell like candy. Because I wasn't that girl. I was like, heavy metal! Give me some horror movies. Give me some Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Freddy Krueger. Motley Crue for life. You know? It never occurred to me that thing that I made would appeal to little girls, because I was never that little girl. So that's my humorous story of, you know. Eventually, I changed the name to Sparkle Glow, because I'd always be like handing it over to the parents. Like, because the kids wouldn't get the reference, but like obviously the parents would have. You know. But anyways, well, that's my story. Part one, anyways. So I gotta spec out the rest of it. Because we've got, you know, everything, you know, from, oh, good Lord, I couldn't even summarize at this point. I'll have to find my notes. But, so, as far as origin stories go, that at least takes you up to about 1984. Also, to note of 1984, I was a very tall child, so I grew out of children's clothing by the time I was 9. So I've been wearing predominantly black since 1984, because I had to wear, like, it was the 1980s. I had to wear juniors clothing. So I've been kind of dressing like an adult since then. Like, I don't know. And my mom never was really, I don't know. Like sometimes I'm like, my mom kind of unintentionally raised me gender neutral. Because I always had really short hair and didn't really wear like frilly girly clothing. That was my choice later in life, you know, once I had a choice for those sorts of things. But anyways, that's my story. Devil horns forever. Rock and roll, motherfuckers. Thank you to my Patreon subscribers, and don't forget to click like and subscribe to hear more about my interesting life. Love you all.